And a lot of the discussion is going to be in the context of, well, inflation is high. They're going to keep increasing interest rates until maybe inflation starts going down. Not necessarily the case. A central bank, when they're raising interest rates, knows eventually they will impact inflation sort of 18 months down the track. Hello again, everybody. This week I want to have a look at the results from my most recent monthly survey of people who read my weekly publications there, my spending plans survey. I did this thing about a week ago and it gives me insight into what you and I are thinking with regard to whether we're going to spend more or less generally on stuff in the next 3 to 6 months. And of prime importance to myself is the change in our spending intentions. Not so much where they sit, but where they are going up or down to. And what happened was that right at the start of this year, the first monthly survey showed a big decrease in spending intentions. I had around a net 11% of respondents, you and I, etc., saying we're going to cut back on our spending. In my most recent survey done a week ago, got just over 1,000 people replying to that. A net 20% of people said they're going to cut back on spending in the next few months. That I think is quite significant when it comes to talking about interest rates. You'll have noted that overseas we've got interest rates going up in Australia. The Bank of England has increased recently also. The Federal Reserve is really kicking it in the guts as far as interest rates are going up. And so you're going to see a lot of headlines about interest rates going up, some people being under stress, etc. And a lot of the discussion is going to be in the context of, well, inflation is high. They're going to keep increasing interest rates until maybe inflation starts going down. Not necessarily the case. A central bank, when they're raising interest rates, knows eventually they will impact inflation sort of 18 months down the track. What they are really looking for is evidence that the increase in interest rates is causing consumers to cut back on their spending. And that's what I can see right at the coalface is happening now at an accelerating pace, essentially. And there's a couple of special factors contributing to our pullback in spending, or domestically at least. Number one, we're allocating more money for travelling overseas. And number two, of prime importance, we're having to allocate more money for groceries. There is an increasing proportion of people saying, I'm going to spend more on groceries in the next 3 to 6 months, at exactly the same time as more people are saying, I'm going to cut back on spending on furniture, motor vehicles, eating out, technology, sporting equipment, gardening stuff, all that sort of thing. The increase in the cost of living is acting as a bit of a tightening of monetary policy itself. And so what that adds up to is I am more confident that the peak in the official cash rate will be 3%, not the 3.25% to 3.5% the Reserve Bank is noting there, or even higher for some people in the markets. And my view for mortgage rates is it's still reasonable to expect maybe 1% extra going on the 1 year fixed rate term, and maybe it's 0.5% or so goes on the other rates, 2, 3, out towards 5 years. So there is still extra restraint coming in the housing market from interest rates going a bit higher, but just be a wee bit wary. While it can be a bit of fun and games for some people, scaring the children about how high interest rates would go. I could sit here at the moment and say, oh, heck, 5%, that's nothing. I paid 18.5% with my first mortgage back in 1987, but it was a different world back then when inflation was averaging about 11% per annum. Inflation has actually averaged quite low level in New Zealand up until recently, and it will be back to averaging at a low level again in the future. Anyway, like I say, I think when it comes to interest rates, just don't buy into too much of the dystopia out there. Further upside is maybe a bit more limited than most people are thinking, and just be wary about the stuff you read out of the United States and don't blindly apply it to New Zealand, because they have some extra catching up to do over the year, and a lot of that has already happened here in New Zealand. All the best.